I love you, Cleveland, and I love you, Ohio. And a very pleasant welcome to this week's version of Bonus Time with Drennan here on the Big Play Sports Network. Hi, I'm Bruce Drennan along with Ryan Smith, my producer. What a big show we've got planned for you this week, obviously, with the NFL draft upon us. Mark Lawrence will be joining us in the following segment, the second segment of our show. The editor-publisher of the Playbook, playbooksports.com. We've used him, of course. I've used him over the decades, one of the top handicappers in the country in football season, both college and pro, so he's quite the expert that we want to pick his brain about the upcoming draft. I don't want to say unfortunately, I want to say fortunately, this is probably the most uninteresting draft for our Cleveland Browns. Thank God. It used to be our Super Bowl. But now, thank God, we don't even have a first-round pick and very few, quite frankly, overall. So I'm glad to report that. Now, who knows what Barry will do? He may trade up. He may do something out of the ordinary. I really don't anticipate that. We'll hear what Lawrence has to say, and I'll get Ryan's input. I might as well get it from you right now before we get into the basketball and the baseball. Do you anticipate Barry doing anything glamorous?
Well, you know, with Andrew Berry, you never know. He's one of the most wild cards when it comes to draft. I'm sure he's got backup plans on backup plans on backup plans just based on how the draft board starts flowing. But right now, I mean, I hope to stay at the 54. I think that's a lot of people would like to, given that we don't have the first. But with Andrew Berry, you mentioned, you never know. And Kevin Stefanski said it. That man is so laser focused in the draft. He could probably tell you each and every single player that's in the draft, 7th round, all the way till. So never know with Andrew Berry, but we'll see.
Well, certainly it's well reported that the Browns could use some wide receivers. The problem is most of these top wide receivers are going to be gone by the time they get to their first pick, right?
Yeah, I mean, some of the mocks that have come out, man, I mean, we're seeing 14, 15 receivers off the board before the Browns are even up at 54. It's a historic offensive draft. I think the first 8 projected picks are all going to be offense, which is, I think, would either tie or be a record in its own. So, but that's just the trend, Bruce, is we're seeing all these receivers start to come off the board.
What do you think they'll take?
Well,
position-wise.
Well, I would say it's between. That's another beauty part of it, Bruce, is the fact that our team is really, really built. Every year, it seems like we were laser focused into one position, but that isn't really the case this year. But I will say, I'm going to lean wide receiver still. I still think there's really deep class. I think it's a good spot to still get a good one that you can either develop along with Cedric Tillman. So I'm going to lean receiver or D tackle.
Do you think because of their position without having a first-round pick and not picking until 54th, if they stay there, that they have to play the game of best available athlete?
No. I think the way that they're built, well, actually, I don't think they have to play anything. I think Andrew Berry's going to do what he thinks is best, obviously. But I think a lot of what they do is going to be a sign of the future in terms of if you pass on a receiver, then maybe you hope then we're going to get an Amari Cooper extension. You can lean on him the next year and then draft a receiver next year. And then, I mean, if they did go down the route of somehow for some reason drafting like a Trey Benson at running back, maybe that gives us a little sign. We don't know exactly what's going on with Nick Chubb and his health, but I think the pick will maybe show us a lot of what is behind the curtains in Berea.
Yeah, maybe they'll take a running back.
It's some
just
people
as
have
a
it
safeguard because of the uncertainty about Chubb.
Some people haven't taken one.
And, you know, again, we've discussed this. This division is the toughest division in the NFL. And with the addition of Russell Wilson now in Pittsburgh, backed up by Fields, let alone Burrow coming back, presumably healthy for Cincinnati, let alone Baltimore with a chip on their shoulder considering the disappointment of falling to Kansas City for the AFC crown. I mean, it's so brutal. It's so brutal. And who knows if all the wild cards aren't going to come out of our division. We shall see. At any rate, we will be giving extensive coverage to you in the second segment when we welcome Mark Lawrence back to the show. And I do want to focus a lot here in the opening on the Cavaliers because as we said last week when we had Gene Winters, and by the way, I'm presuming we're going to win this series as we predicted a week ago. I think we're going to prevail against Orlando, even though the series now shifts to their home floor. But I do think that the Cavaliers will advance to the next round, and then it's do or die. But I think maybe I'll give Gene Winters a call, Ryan, see if we can get him back on next week so we can preview what the big series with Boston will be all about. But I'm very proud of the way the Cavaliers are coming. Talk about playing with a chip on their shoulder. I think because of the disappointment of falling to New York in the first round a year ago, and that being a very physical series in favor of New York, the Cavaliers came out and I think really wanted to make a statement, particularly Jared Allen.
Yeah, I mean, Jared Allen, you hit the nail on the head right there. I mean, 20 rebounds. I saw a gaudy stat. Honestly, Gene made the graphics over there at Bally's. He tied Brad Daugherty 20 rebounds in a playoff game for the Cavs, only behind 21 with Kevin Love. I mean, he's been putting in the work. His motor these first two games on both sides of the floor, I've noticed, he's been playing his absolute tail off, Bruce. And it's great to see because he did. Remember, go back to New York. Everybody had the questions of physicality. Well, flip it over to this year for the Magic. They seem to learn from their mistakes, and it's really a tale of two series.
Yeah, Orlando was kind of in the same boat as we were a year ago. They're a young basketball team. They're an up-and-coming team. They've been built very well structured. And so they're kind of in the same boat, getting their feet wet against a team that was disappointed a year ago because of anticipating going further than what they did. So I think, and by the way, it's no disgrace considering the way New York has started off with their series. But I certainly believe that the Cavs are making a statement, including Game 2, 96-86, which wasn't hairy at all. Game 1 at one point got a little hairy for the Cavs in that second half, and then they prevailed and pulled away. But Game 2 was total domination with Mitchell. What did he score? 14 in the first quarter and wound up with only 23 total?
Yeah, he looked like a madman on fire in that first half. And I'll chalk it up to we didn't need him to do that much in the second half because our defense was again on fire. So, but yeah, he looked like a man possessed in that first half.
Yeah, and good to see Mobley playing and effectively scoring in double figures, and he didn't get 10 rebounds, double figures rebounds on the last game, but he certainly did on the first one. And Strus, everybody's contributing. They're going with an 8-man rotation. Okoro off the bench in the last game scored 10. So the Cavaliers with a commanding 2-2-0 lead in this series, and I do like their chances of advancing. I don't think it'll go the full way. Do you?
No, I would still lean Orlando can get one at home. It's still the playoffs. I think they'll get one. So I'll say a gentleman's sweep. Cavs in 5.
Okay. We will continue covering the Cavaliers, but I want to talk to Ryan here about the other series. Obviously, tonight, Boston will host Miami for their Game 2, and New Orleans is traveling to Oklahoma City for their Game 2. Oak City up 1-0 as Boston is. And Boston's still clearly the team to beat in the East. No question about it. How about Milwaukee getting beat by Indiana?
Yeah, I'll tell you what. That goes to show how big Giannis is. Obviously, that's not me telling anybody anything new there. But Indiana, that was their MO. They score a ton of points. They don't play any defense, and that's why it's going to hurt them in the postseason. But it's not surprising that they stole one in Milwaukee, honestly. Pascal Siakam's been playing really great. Tyrese has been dishing the ball, and Damian Lillard can only do so much by himself. 35-plus in both these games, but that's still too much. They're not enough for them to counter the firepower of Indiana.
I think New York is making a statement, too.
Oh, most definitely they are. And I do want to say Joel Embiid does look, he has the excuse. He hasn't been playing basketball for a little while. He's just getting back. But again, Jalen Brunson has been playing amazing. And then even the Game 2, they fought their way back. That last-minute comeback was something for the ages, whether you want to say it was luck or not, by Jalen Brunson hitting that 3, DiVincenzo getting the game-winning 3 eventually. But they are making a statement, 2-0 against Philadelphia.
I, for one, am not going to shed any tears if the Lakers get swept.
Oh, I will not either.
But LeBron and company are already what did he complain about not being a unanimous MVP or something? I don't know, some nonsense like that with his ego showing like it does so often. I think Denver is still, because of their experience, they're really such a dangerous team over there in the West, and it's going to be hard to believe. You got to dethrone them, and I certainly think that Dallas has got a good team. They're taking care of it. Although that series is now tied at 1, as Dallas was able to beat the LA Clippers. Also, it was interesting, if you recall, Ryan, that Gene last week. Gene Winters, the statistical graphic designer for the Cavaliers telecasts on Bally Sports Ohio, my former producer for many, many years, was with us last week in case you missed the show, and he predicted Phoenix.
Yeah, I mean, that was a popular pick, given that you have Kevin Durant, you have Devin Booker, you have now Bradley Beal. You had guys that can get buckets just by themselves and have playoff experience. I think it just goes to show, Minnesota is the real deal. They're throwing it in the postseason. I mean, Anthony Edwards is, in my opinion, arguably already a top 5 player, and he's super young. He's going to be an absolute superstar. And then you got the two towers and Rudy Gobert and Karl Anthony Towns, and they're just so much deeper. That's Phoenix's problem. They have the firepower, but they're so not deep.
Do you think that Phoenix had to have stolen one of those first 2 games in order to prevail in this series, rather than now having to win the next 5?
Statistically, probably they would have, and it's tough for me to ever count out Kevin Durant, but he didn't look great in Game 2. So I would say, yeah, they probably needed to steal one. But if they win both in Phoenix and get it 2-2, I'm never going to count Kevin Durant out. But I think that that really hurt their chances.
Well, we revealed last week, Gene revealed that he liked Phoenix overall and stuck to his guns, because he had said that to us a couple of months ago when we had him on. I didn't ask you who you liked in the West.
I would have said the Nuggets. I just think until you dethrone them, you're having the 3-time MVP now in Jokic. Jamal Murray's good. You have Aaron Gordon. They're so deep.
It's sort of like the Kansas City Chiefs.
Exactly.
Until you prove you can beat them.
Exactly.
And Jokic is just so extraordinary. I cannot get over how good he is. His passing ability and every other aspect of the game. And he's fun to watch.
Oh, my God, he's so fun.
All right, so anything else about the NBA playoffs? We're looking good. Obviously, the Cavaliers will resume play on Thursday. We're recording our show here on Wednesday, as we usually do. But on Thursday, it will be Orlando hosting our Cavaliers, with the New York Knicks traveling to Philadelphia with a commanding 2-zip lead, and Denver with a commanding 2-zip lead traveling to play the L.A. Lakers. So there you have that. And let's now move to the Guardians, where last night another come-from-behind victory in the 7th inning after Boston had taken the lead in the top half of the frame, scoring 2. In the 8th inning, Jose with an insurance solo shot home run, adding another insurance run, holding on for the 4-1 victory. I can't get over this Ben Lively.
Yes, Bruce.
How well he is pitching, especially going up against Houck, and who's tremendous. And not quite as dominant as he was in Boston when we faced him last. But this Lively was tremendous against him in Boston, and last night prevailed. And in his second start versus Boston, 6 1/3 innings of 1-run ball, 5 hits, no walks. I love that. 7 strikeouts. He's got an ERA of 2.38.
Yeah, I think that's the best ERA on the team right now, because Bieber obviously is out for the year, but he's been pitching his absolute tail off. I think 14 Ks now through 2 starts or something like that. And yeah, just 2 walks. I know he had a couple in his first start, but that's to be expected. And he's been absolutely lights out. I know he didn't get the win because we didn't get much run insurance while he was still pitching, so that stinks. Sorry, Ben. But he's been absolutely huge. Him and Xavier Curry, who had to come in for 1 game about a week ago. But that's been the motto. We've had to have guys fill in for our injuries here in the starting pitching unit, and it's been absolutely tremendous to see.
I forget who asked me on the golf course yesterday why did they send Curry? Curry's going to be back. I mean, that's one of these deals where he's going to be back and forth, and he's showing the ability to start and be in long relief and be situational as well. A valuable arm of many valuable arms that the Guardians have compiled on this roster, both the 40-man and in the lower levels as well. But last night, after Lively went to 6 1/3, the bullpen took over. 2 2/3 innings of shutout ball, allowing merely 1 hit, no walks, 5 strikeouts. Barlow, Gaddis, and then Clase, who got the save with 3 strikeouts himself in the 9th inning. This bullpen is raising eyebrows. I think it's legitimate to say they have performed up to this point. It's certainly just the first month of the season. Started a few games in March. But for all intents and purposes, we're still in the infancy portion of this schedule. But I don't think there's any argument that the Guardians bullpen is one of the best in the major leagues right now.
Yeah, Bruce, I mean, it's probably statistically, you could say right now they're the best. And, we needed it because we're yet to see a starting pitcher go 7 innings as we're almost a month into the season, which is vitally important. And you mentioned Hunter Gaddis has been on another planet.
Oh, I love him.
He's playing on an all-star level.
And you know what's interesting about him, Brian?
Yeah.
He's not a typical reliever with a 2-pitch arsenal. He's got 4 or 5.
Yeah, I mean, you never know if the injuries keep stacking up. Maybe he'll be a starter for one of these games. But he's been absolutely incredible. And then once you get to that 9th inning, I mean, Clase, he's just untouchable.
I think they don't even have Karinchak.
Yeah.
And they have, Henches was hurt. I mean, when you think of these arms that the organization has developed, I mean, it is really amazing.
Yeah, and I mean, even a guy like Cade Smith, who I know he got
I like him too, even though he got shelled, yes.
Yeah, Boston Red Sox seemed to have his number the 2 times, but before that, I mean, he was pitching great ball. Was arguably, to that point, the best guy in our bullpen.
Yes. So we will continue with this series against the Boston Red Sox. It'll be Cookie on the mound for us tonight. Carlos Carrasco against Criswell. Boston had been playing good ball, too. So the Red Sox actually elevating themselves out of the cellar in that Eastern Division. But the Guardians are just scorching hot right now. My goodness, they've won 5 in a row, 8 of 10, and 10-3 on the road, 7-3 at home. They will resume the series tonight. The other sports note that I wanted to make note of before we go to break and welcome Mark Lawrence to talk about the draft. Scotty Scheffler did it again. He's just uncanny. Now, first of all, I got to tell you, after winning the Masters, I was very surprised he played at Harbor Town. What was the name of that event? I forget all these sponsors. But it's at Harbor Town. I played that course once. I played it during Thanksgiving weekend because, the weather allows you to do so down there in South Carolina. And I wasn't impressed with the course. It was kind of boring to me, except when you get to that 16th, 17th, and 18th holes with the light tower on 18. But I was surprised he played in this tournament, considering his wife and the expecting baby. So he wins the Masters. He goes to this tournament. He comes out of nowhere and then dominates. And then the rain delay, he finishes up on Monday. My goodness, I mean, there's just no telling to this guy on how great he is right now. But as I said following the Masters, Ryan, he now has to prove, after winning his second Masters green jacket, he now has to prove he can win the U.S. Open, win the PGA's next, and the British. And I'm not saying he does it this year. No one's ever done it, win the Grand Slam in the same year. But that's what he's got to prove, to elevate himself into the category of the Watsons and the Gary Players, let alone the Tiger Woods and the Jack Nicklauses. But he certainly has to do that. And right now, the guy that he's competing against, who was not a factor in the Masters, who has 5 majors and plays the PGA and the U.S. Open better than anybody else in the world, is Koepka. And the PGA is up next in May. So, and by the way, speaking of May, I haven't even talked this over with Ryan. We'll have coverage for you of the Run for the Roses, the Kentucky Derby.
Okay.
The first Saturday in May. That's always fun to cover the Kentucky Derby and look at all of the bonnets and the the gorgeous gowns that the ladies wear, plus the beautiful horses and the first leg of the Triple Crown of racing. When we come back, Mark Lawrence, editor-publisher of The Playbook, will pick his brain about the upcoming draft and what we can expect from our Cleveland Browns. That's next on Bonus Time with Drennan You're on the Big Play Sports Network. Now here is the risk that the Browns had to take with Great to have you back. Bonus time with Drennan here on the Big Play Sports Network. Bruce Drennan, Ryan Smith. We welcome Mark Lawrence, the handicapper, editor, publisher of the Playbook, playbooksports.com. You've heard Mark with me over the years and since I joined the Big Play Sports Network staff, handicapping college and pro ball. He's one of the best in the country. And I wanted to get him on before the NFL draft as we tape on a Wednesday. The draft starts tomorrow, of course. Let me also say that Mark puts out a tremendous newsletter pertaining to the draft. So check that out. Again, playbooksports.com. Mark, how you doing, partner?
I'm doing just terrific, Bruce. Like you and all the football fans, we're anxious. We're geeking up for the NFL draft coming tomorrow.
Well, you know, I said at the beginning of the show that I'm glad to report that fortunately this is not the Super Bowl for the Browns. We finally have a year in which it's kind of going to be, I won't say uninteresting, but certainly not the priority like it has been so many times with the quarterback controversy and being one of the worst teams in the NFL. It's kind of nice not to be in that position.
Yeah, it sure is. You don't have everybody targeting you, and we're expecting, as we always do, Andrew Berry to pull magic out of his hat, as he's done before in the past. He's just absolutely slayed the draft before in the past. And I'll be anxious to see whether or not he trades up or trades down this year.
All right, let's concentrate. First of all, I want to point out that over the last 8 years, Mark Lawrence has named 190 of the 254 players selected in round one. Think about that. Also, in 2020, Mark named 7 of the first 9 players drafted, and also pointed out that with all the quarterback emphasis in this first round this year, only 7 quarterbacks drafted number 1 have ever won a Super Bowl. It's quite a list, Mark, but it certainly is going to be interesting considering the projections of all these quarterbacks going in this first round and near the top of the draft.
Yeah, so many quarterbacks this year, Bruce, and the question is, will any of them be landing on a team good enough to win a Super Bowl? We don't see that happening in the Windy City, in your former hometown, just yet anyway. But there are some quarterbacks that are really, really noteworthy and deserve to be where they are. It's a very strong draft for the quarterbacks this year.
Now, foregone conclusion that the Bears will take Caleb Williams. Obviously, they traded Fields to Pittsburgh to be the backup to Russell Wilson, which is an amazing thing that the Steelers have done during this offseason, obviously. But they were up in arms in Chicago. I know sources I have there, Mark, were saying that, they were very uncertain about Fields. They were expecting more out of him. They've had quarterback problems for years now, like we had for so many years. But now they get Caleb Williams, and I don't know how long it'll take him to adapt to the NFL, but it is a foregone conclusion that he's their guy.
Oh, he is their guy, Bruce. In fact, I think there's places in Vegas that are no longer even taking prop wagers on who will be the first pick. I mean, he's such a landslide choice. It wouldn't surprise me if it came out that he was already signed. I don't think they're allowed to do that, but nonetheless, before the draft begins, I think what he brings most to the table here is he is an escape artist at the best. I mean, he's very, very difficult to bring down, sort of Patrick Mahomes-like, if you will. He also has an arm that's very, very accurate. There's a reason that the Chicago Bears stayed where they were to reel in Caleb Williams this year.
It's a very tough call and a tough question that I have to ask you. Do you think superstardom is in store for him?
No, I do not. I don't think, first of all, he's getting off on to that path with the right team here right now. Chicago, not to take a pot shot at Chicago, but, if you're going to build your career, you're going to probably do it in an elite type team with a lot of talent surrounding you. The other thing is, he transferred out. He didn't make the combine. There's a lot of things that he hasn't done, he should have done. And I happen to think that the quarterback that will be taken second behind him is a better quarterback than he is.
Who's that?
That would be, in my mind, Jaden Daniels, the Heisman Trophy winner out of LSU. This kid is the real deal, Bruce. He's got a strong arm. He's got cat-like reflexes. He ran the ball for over 1,300 yards this year. And, if it weren't Caleb Williams cemented into this number one slot, there's some people that I know that follow this draft tremendously, deeply close, feel Jaden Daniels should be the guy for Chicago and not Caleb Williams. We'll find that out, but I do see Jaden Daniels going to Washington with a number 2 pick.
So despite how high you are on him, he's going to a horrible team. How far away are they from surrounding him with the accompanying cast that he needs to achieve that goal of superstardom?
Well, that's a great question. You look at the likes of if you will, the Carolina Panthers and Trevor Lawrence, for all the accolades that he had, the talent that he has. He went to Carolina, or Jacksonville, I should say, and it took so long for that program to come around. But you know something, Bruce? They have come around, Jacksonville. And a lot of the reason they've come around is because of Trevor Lawrence, who's only going to get better. And we see that same situation with Jaden Daniels at Washington. They won't be in the playoffs this year, probably likely not next year. But I think 3 years down the road, we're going to be talking about Jaden Daniels being an all-Pro Bowl type quarterback in the NFL.
On your mock draft and your prediction, Belichick has gone from New England, but will they follow the trend of taking a Michigan quarterback who was pretty successful for them over the decades? I'm talking about McCarthy, of course.
Well, you are talking about McCarthy. I don't think they're going to go to McCarthy, and we know the Michigan quarterback thing with Tom Brady and everything good like that. But I think they're going to go for the more talented quarterback here, and that would be Drake May, the quarterback out of North Carolina. He's a great athlete. He brings a lot of skills into the game here. He could have left for the draft last year, Bruce, and been a top 10 pick as a quarterback, but he opted to stay. And he really didn't have quite the year last year that he even had in the previous year. But nonetheless, he does a lot of things really, really well. And it wouldn't surprise me when this whole thing shakes out that ends up being Drake May out of these top 3 quarterbacks as being the best of the 3. But right now, I got him ranked right now personally. Jaden Daniels 1, Drake May 2, and Caleb Williams 3.
That's interesting, especially if they take him, considering the improvements that Miami has made, let alone Buffalo being so established as good as they are.
No question about that.
The other quarterbacks I want to touch upon before we get to other positions, where do you see McCarthy falling?
Well, when I put my draft together, Bruce, here, I had to do it under one contingency, and that is slotting the players where they're selecting or where they're going to be expected to select. No trades. I can't. Who knows who's going to make a trade? You can't supervise or improvise a trade within these drafts. So I had to play them where the slots were. So where I have them going to Minnesota, and I think they'd be thrilled to get him in Minnesota, the Vikings. But I think there's going to be some trades for J.J. McCarthy, though, and maybe even up as high as number 3 in the draft this year, because the kid is one thing, Bruce, if nothing else, he is a flat-out winner. 34-2 in high school, 27-1 in his college football career. There's a reason he led Michigan to a national championship this year, because the kid does nothing but win football games, and he's very, very intelligent. I think whoever lands him is going to have a plum for a play for a quarterback this year. But I haven't slotted number 11 as far as the draft goes this year.
How about Michael Penix from Washington?
Well, I'm a little bit higher on him, I think, than other people are. I've been reading a lot of mock drafts that have him maybe even going in the second round. And I think a lot of that reasoning is because he's very injury prone. His last 4 seasons have been career-ending or season-ending injuries for Penix. 2 knees, 2 shoulders. We've seen it before. He's sort of rangy, if you will, but boy, has he got an arm. He can light the air up. No question about that. I like him as a quarterback here, and I think he's going to end up being in Las Vegas. I think he's going to be right on the heels of McCarthy. I have him going mid-first round here, and I think whoever gets him is also going to be satisfied with what they have.
All right, let's go to the top receiver, and of course that's Marvin Harrison out of Ohio State. A lot of mock drafts I've been looking at, Mark, have him projected to go to Arizona to team up with Kyler Murray. That would be quite a combination.
Oh, wouldn't it, though? I mean, that's where I have him going, is to Arizona as well. I think he would help Kyler Murray as well. He's one athlete. He's a a generational wide receiver is what he is, Bruce. Maybe even better than his father, a Hall of Fame wide receiver. It's kind of hard to make that statement right now before he's even caught a pass in the National Football League. But he has all the tools. He checks all the boxes here. And if you remember, he was a quarterback, if you will, for Ohio, or a wide receiver for Ohio State here, that when he did a pro day workout for Ohio State here, he made the quarterback. The quarterback didn't make him. He is really exceptional. I like him real well. He didn't have to go to the combine. He didn't have to do a pro day workout because everybody knows what Marvin Harrison Jr. can do, and he's going to do it on a big level in the NFL. Arizona is the big recipient here. I was surprised, Bruce. I really thought personally, you asked me, I thought they would have kept Justin Fields and made Marvin Harrison the #1 pick of the draft. Because he could have really improved Justin Fields as a quarterback, but that's not the route they saw.
Interesting. Top tight end, of course, is Brock Bowers out of Georgia. Some projections have him going to Seattle to team up with Geno Smith, who's kind of an interesting Cinderella story considering the how he has labored, but then apparently has found a home for himself in Seattle. Now, my question about Bowers to you, Mark, do you foresee him becoming the next Kelce or Gronkowski?
Well, I foresee him being at least that. Okay. He's the only 2-time Mackey Award winner as a tight end. That says a lot in the world of college football, the history of college football. This kid is really the real deal here. A big reason that Georgia won back-to-back national championships. And I don't see him getting any further. I think the New York Jets are going to welcome him with both arms in the number 10 slot when he comes there. Every draft I'm seeing has Brock Bowers going to the Jets. It's almost too common of a selection place here, but the Jets have other needs. They need some wide receivers. They need a little help on the defense. They can even use a quarterback because Aaron Rodgers, we know, is very long in the tooth. But the bottom line here is a talent such as Brock Bowers cannot go past the top 10. I have him going to the Jets.
Now, this is top heavy. The draft is top heavy with offensive players, obviously. Who are the top defensive players that you foresee going in this first round, and to whom?
Well, you've got, like you said, there's a lot of offense here, whether it's at wide receiver, quarterback, or offensive line. There's a ton of those players like that. But there's a kid who I think is going to be a little bit of a surprise. Maybe I might not be pronouncing this right, but Laiatu Latu he's an edge rusher from UCLA. Some people have him going maybe 10, 15. I have got him going to Atlanta. I don't think Atlanta is going to let this kid go. He had a medical injury. He hurt his neck at Washington and retired, but he came back, Bruce, and he came back dominantly. Probably easily the best defensive player in the Pac-12 last football season here. He's one. I think he's somebody that's going to go in the top 10. Other people say maybe not quite that high, but I'm going to say this also before I get on to anybody else here. This is not a defense or a draft that's laden with defensive prowess. There are some good players here. Kid named Fashanu from Penn State. He's a I'm sorry, Bruce. He goes on the other side. There's so many guys whose last names are these, if you will, Samoan names, which are very, very difficult to pronounce, but they're very, very good, and they're very good in the overall. Dallas Turner, the kid from Alabama. I don't know if you remember, but Will Anderson Jr. was a #1 pick last year by the Houston Texans, and Dallas Turner stepped in and filled his shoes at Alabama, and he did it really, really well. I have him coming down here to Miami. I think Miami, they lost Wilkins on the defensive side. I think he'll fill the hole real, real well for them there that way. And you've got a kid named Cooper DeJean, a quarterback from Iowa, who is exceptional. He's built like a you-know-what house. Is a cornerback, and I think he'll also be leading the way as far as the defense goes. You got the other kid, Bruce. I'll throw it in real quick here. Devondre Sweat, defensive lineman from Texas.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, this kid, I think he's going to slip a little bit, Bruce, because he's he's not related to Montez Sweat, but he is related to his brother Josh Sweat was a defensive end with the Philadelphia Eagles and is. There's a lot of bloodline in him, so I think you'll see him in the top first round here as well.
Now, there's so many wide receivers. The Browns don't pick until the 54th spot in the second round mark, and we know that the Browns have a need for wide receivers, but there's so many wide receivers projected to go before the Browns get to their pick. How do you see that falling, and might they go another direction because of that?
Well, you can rest assured that Barry's going to take the best football player available, whoever it is, when it happens to be their turn when the draft gets down there. But they are loaded with wide receivers this draft, no question. We have a total of 7 of them in the first round. That includes Bowers as a tight end, by the way. But 7 offensive linemen, 7 wide receivers, pass catchers, if you will, going in the first round. Now, if a wide receiver isn't there, I think the Browns could also look at a big kid. He played at BYU. He was a 5-star recruit out of high school here. His name is Kingsley. I'm bad with these names here, Bruce. Samataya. Taya. I think he could be a first-round draft pick here, and if he's there for the Browns, I think they'll gobble him up. I don't think he will be. I think he could possibly go in the first round. But when you go to the wide receiver position for Cleveland here, this draft is so deep, Bruce. I mentioned 7 players in the first round. There's another handful of players in the second round we're going to see as wide receivers here. I know the Browns would be thrilled, just absolutely thrilled, if they had Xavier Worthy from Texas available in the second round. I don't think he's going to be there. I think Buffalo's going to pick him off late in the first round. You got a kid named Keon Coleman from Florida State who can be exactly everything the Cleveland Browns need. I think they'll have their eye on him. And I think Adonai Mitchell from Texas also. Texas is a very, very strong football team, Bruce. And you see that at this wide receiver position here. So I think whatever it is, I think that's where the Browns will go. But I really have a gut feeling here that he's going to end up trading down and locking up some more draft talent.
Oh, really? That's interesting. I'll get to that in a second. Do you foresee the possibility of taking a running back for insurance purposes because of the uncertainty about Chubb? Maybe somebody like a Trey Benson out of Florida State who could be available by that second-round pick that the Browns have.
I don't, Bruce, only because the running back position in this draft is really weak to begin with. There's no really stars running back. Nick Chubb, when the Browns nabbed him in the second round, I mean, he was an outstanding athlete and he ended up being, obviously, I think one of the best draft picks the Cleveland Browns have ever had. We don't have that in the running back position here this year. And I think if Cleveland fortifies itself, at least in the running back position, I think it will be through either trade or maybe acquiring somebody on a waiver wire or a free agency type of deal. But I don't think they'll be drafting a running back this year, no.
Besides the 1 pick in the second round, the Browns have 1 pick in the third. That's the 85th spot in that third round. No picks in the fourth. So let me ask you again, you mentioned you wouldn't be surprised if Barry trades down. Expand on that.
Well, you can either trade up or you can trade down, obviously, here. And if you trade up, Bruce, it has to be for a player that you really have your eyes on and you really, really want. I don't think there's a player in this draft that Andrew Barry can make that claim to there being a player that he really, really wants or really, really needs. I think he just needs to surround himself with talent. He's got a great eye for talent. He likes to focus in on these Power 5 teams. A lot of the Cleveland Browns came out of the Southeast Conference. You're going to see a lot of players here from Alabama and Georgia available even later on in the rounds here. I think Cleveland is much better off stocking its roster with a slew of good talent rather than trading up and giving away draft picks to get somebody that may or may not make the team or fit the bill.
They also don't really have the assets to trade up, Mark.
Correct. That's true. Exactly right. So what they'll be doing is financing the future if they do that.
Now, let me ask about an Ohio connection. I've seen some projections that the Browns may stay within the state and might be interested in a defensive tackle, Mike Hall Jr. from Ohio State. What do you think?
That's a possibility. The Browns do have some need on the defensive line, and I think if they get him around the third round or so, I think they'll go that way. They could go that route, not because he's an Ohio State guy. It would be nice, from a fan standpoint, but because he's talented. He's very, very talented. So I think you nailed it, Bruce. You might see Mike Hall wearing a Cleveland Browns uniform this season.
They have to take some one or two offensive linemen, do they not, for depth chart purposes, Mark?
I think they do. And this kid that I mentioned here earlier on that I had a real tough time pronouncing, the kid from BYU, Kingsley Samataya, is the guy. I mentioned he was a 5-star high school recruit, and he transferred to BYU, where he just absolutely dominated this year. BYU went into the Big 12 and unexpectedly was a surprise team. And they were that because this kid just anchored the offensive line. He stands out tall. He's big, very, very big. I think he'll stick out in this draft. If he falls to Cleveland in this second round of this draft, that would be the plum for the Browns.
Now, I came across a name. He wouldn't be until much later in the draft. Out of Oklahoma, he's another offensive tackle, Walter Rouse. Are you familiar with him?
Not really, Bruce. I don't, as far as I go, when I do my drafts, I'm going 1 or 2 rounds deep, and I don't know where he'll absolutely fit here. Another player out of Oklahoma that caught my eye was a kid named Guyton, who I think is going to be a first-round pick. But you tell me about Walter Rouse.
Well, my point is the odds of injury to the offensive lineman is only second position-wise to running backs in the NFL.
Yes.
And we've seen injuries to the Browns offensive linemen over the years, as well as every other team. So I think it is mandatory, as I asked you previously, that they draft at least one offensive lineman, preferably 2, for depth chart purposes. And that's why I'm looking, I'm searching, I'm seeking possibilities.
Well, doesn't correct me if I'm wrong, the kid from Alabama that they made a number 1 pick, is he going to be in the end of his rookie contract this year?
Yes.
He'll be available to leave. So that also fortifies the fact that the Browns will be looking for help on the offensive line, more particularly at the tackle level here as well. So, I think the combination of that and the fact that you always need offensive linemen, and in the case with the Browns, you need offensive linemen to protect Deshaun Watson, who has proven to be a little bit wobbly from a physical standpoint. He was never that way in college, but he's proven to be that way thus far. So I'm with you. I think they'll be on the hunt for offensive linemen, particularly the offensive tackle position here. And there's a kid that was the center, I should say, for the University of Oregon, who was Jackson Powers Johnson. This kid started only 1 year this particular year here, but what a dominant force he was. He won the Remington Trophy Award, and I don't think that'll allow him to get to the Browns in the second round. But if he were to do that, I mentioned he's a center, but he can also play other positions here. The Browns would pounce all over him.
So Mark is predicting that the Browns may go for numbers because being in a position where they don't have a first-round pick and only 1 second, 1 third, no fourth, might anticipate seeing Barry trade down to get more numbers, bring these kids into camp, and hopefully they'll get lucky and get a couple of impactful players. In conclusion, Mark, the Browns made tremendous strides last year. Let's all agree upon that.
Yeah.
It was fun with Flacco. My opinion is that the pressure on Watson, this is, as I put it, Mark, the clock is ticking. This is a 5-year contract. We are entering the 3rd year of his 5-year contract. You got to get your feet wet into the playoffs. They've done that, but they did that with Flacco. So Watson has that to prove, and I believe that expectations are such that he has to exceed the accomplishment of Flacco. First and foremost, do you agree with that?
No question about that, Bruce. And I also think he has the ability to exceed those expectations here. If he stays healthy, there's a lot of talent around him, and you can rest assured that Andrew Berry will make sure that's the case here. I think this could be a breakout year for Deshaun Watson and the Cleveland Browns.
And I think it's important also because of that clock ticking, getting to that next level in the postseason, because obviously it's a 5-year contract. And I have contended that if the Browns don't make it to the Super Bowl within that 5-year contract, I think it'll set the franchise back an additional 5 years at least, Mark.
Oh, no question about it. They have so much money tied up into this deal here right now, which is purported to be a bad deal, but they know what they're doing. At least Andrew Berry does. I'm tremendously impressed by him. And Haslam has a checkbook that's open and ready to go, rock and roll. So I'm with you. They have to get this job done. They have to make it. I'm going to say they have to make it to the Super Bowl before the end of his contract for everything to be considered a success.
Now, what was your take when Pittsburgh went out and got Russell Wilson and got Fields as his backup?
Well, I think they obviously improved their quarterback position tremendously. Kenny Pickett was not a National Football League quarterback, by far not a first-round quarterback. Mason Rudolph, we all know what he is. He's a career backup, and even though he had a little bit of a spurt at the end of the season here, I don't even think we're going to see him play this year. So they made a huge stride, I think, at the quarterback position. Now, whether Mike Tomlin settles on who he's going to settle on between those two quarterbacks remains to be seen. But I personally feel that Russell Wilson's better days are in the rear view mirror, so we might end up seeing him being the backup quarterback.
That's interesting. Burrow figures to be healthy to start the season for Cincinnati.
Yes, he does. And, that's another thing we're pointing out here in the draft here this year in this first round. Cincinnati is going to go after some help for Joe Burrow just to make sure that he has a wall around him. We have J.C. Latham, the tackle from Alabama, going to Cincinnati with the number 18 pick. So that's what the Bengals' focus will be, is securing the future of Joe Burrow.
And finally, in our division, Baltimore, as I put it, has got to be entering the season with a chip on their shoulder, considering the underachievement of losing to Kansas City for the AFC crown.
They do. I think they felt good getting there, but I think that they felt they could have gone further. And Lamar Jackson, say what you want about him. We talk a lot about him, but boy, he wins a lot of awards and he chews up a lot of yards. So, I think they build themselves up a little bit better defensively. Baltimore does, and I think they're going to make a statement here. I think they'll end up being the team to beat in the AFC North this year.
Mark Lawrence is the editor-publisher of the Playbook, playbooksports.com. Check it out. His, of course, draft is his mock draft is in there, and he has just been so tremendously accurate in predicting what will transpire over his great career. Mark, I look forward to having you on the show again in the near future, and certainly come college and pro football season, my friend.
And my pleasure, as always, Bruce. Tell everybody in Cleveland, Mark Lawrence says hello. Be well.
All right, we'll be back in a minute. Take a look at the baseball races as well as the Ask Bruce segment here on Bonus Time with Drennan on the Big Play Sports Network. Now, here is the risk that Brown had to take with All right, back with you. Bonus Time with Drennan here on the Big Play Sports Network. Our thanks once again to Mark Lawrence. Any observations over there, Ryan?
Well, I agreed with him that it was certainly a possibility that Andrew Berry's going to trade back. I don't think there's any scenario, even we mentioned having the resources to move up. I wouldn't be necessarily shocked one bit to see Andrew Berry get a little more quantity in this year's draft by trading back that 54 a little bit.
Yeah, get some numbers in there and hope they get lucky with some of these lower round picks that they can accumulate. So I think that that makes a lot of sense, what Mark shared with us. I found that interesting, his comments about those quarterbacks, too, at the top end of the first round.
Yes, I have seen a few people mention that they do believe Jaden Daniels does have the ability to be a better NFL quarterback than Caleb Williams. However, I do think he's in the minority. Not saying he's wrong by any stretch of the imagination, but in the minority, ranking Drake May above Caleb Williams as well. I thought that was interesting.
How good do you think McCarthy will be?
I'm not a fan, Bruce.
Really?
I'm not.
Why?
I mean,
because he went to Michigan?
I don't even care that he went to Michigan, honestly.
All
I just
right,
don't.
that's
I mean,
good. I'm glad to hear that.
I think he's a smart quarterback. He's intelligent, and he is a winner. He's proven that on a high school, college level. It could translate to the NFL. I'm just not sure he has the ability to really extend plays out of the pocket like these great quarterbacks, like Patrick Mahomes do, like these Caleb Williams, like Jaden Daniels is able to with his legs. And that's really, in this state of the NFL, that's the mark of a great quarterback.
Let me ask you a question, even though it was a little before your time. I want to take that into consideration with my young, very talented producer. What were the expectations of Tom Brady as a sixth-round pick when he came out of Michigan to go to the NFL to the New England Patriots?
I don't think anybody marked him doing anything half of what he did in his career. But we're in a new era of the NFL.
McCarthy went to Michigan, that he's going to be another Tom Brady. But we shall see. We shall see. All right, let's shift to the baseball races. I mentioned to you earlier, the Guardians have the best record in the entire major leagues at 17-6. We've won 5 in a row, 8 of 10. The impressive stat to me is we are actually 10-3 on the road. And that is just absolutely tremendous. Detroit, likewise, I don't know if you know this, they are 10-3 on the road, and they've overtaken Kansas City. Well, they're actually tied. They've attained a tie with Kansas City for second place in our division, both with a 14-10 record. But the Tigers are hot. They've won 3 in a row, and as I mentioned, 10-3 on the road. We've yet to play them or Kansas City. I think both those upcoming series throughout the season are going to be quite interesting for our team. I don't know what's going on with Minnesota. All I know is they're missing Sonny Gray. They're missing Kenta Maeda. They've got all kinds of problems, not just injuries, but will they regroup? They're already 7.5 games behind our Guardians. So every time they lose, I celebrate because everybody consensus-wise thought that they would be the biggest contender for our team. Again, the Guardians will play tonight against Boston. Criswell for them, and Carrasco, Cookie goes for the Guardians. How about the Chicago White Sox?
Historically bad, Bruce.
3-20?
Historically bad.
Are there AAA teams that could beat them? I think there are.
Oakland Athletics are going to play in a AAA stadium for the next couple of years, so maybe they can match up with them there.
I think they definitely, in Sacramento. Yeah, I think they are. I definitely think they are. There are teams that AAA teams that can beat them. Well, the East has the Yankees at 16-8 in first place. Baltimore had briefly taken over. They're 15-8, right on their heels. They've won 7 of 10. They're the consensus pick to win that division. And the only reason I think that was the case is because there was some suspicion about the Yankees rotation, especially starting the year without Cole. But they've gotten good work out of Stroman and Schmidt, Clark Schmidt, to bridge the gap before they get Cole back. It's the toughest division in baseball. Boston is also very good on the road, and hopefully that last night is a good trend that they will continue to lose on the road, at least for this series. They're 10-4 following last night's loss to our Guardians. Toronto 13-11. They have won 7 of 10. And Tampa Bay, a real good team, has lost 3 in a row, and they've fallen into the cellar at 12-13. The West is surprisingly weak right now. Seattle finds themselves at 12-11, considering how they lost so many of their offensive weapons during the offseason. They have won 7 of their last 10. Texas is merely a 500 team, the defending world champions at 12-12. The Angels are falling back into where we all thought they would be, 10-14. Obviously, Oakland is a hapless team, but the biggest surprise is Houston. And they're 7-17. They've lost 3 in a row, 7 of 10. They're only 4-9 at home. And even though they got Verlander back, I find it quite curious that their pitching staff, Javier, just went on the IL. Obviously, this kid Blanco, who gave him a no-hitter, now is a major part of their rotation, considering these injuries. Framber Valdez hoping to come back any day, but he's been on the IL. So I find that very curious, Ryan, about the Houston Astros, considered by many to be the best all-around team in baseball.
Yeah, I mean, I saw for the couple first weeks of the season, even though they were on a downslide, they were still in the power rankings as a top 10 team, which is just, I guess, a factor of the expectations that they're going to come back. But so far, they haven't really made any real strides to get back to even 500. But I'll say this, Bruce, it's always a good day to see Houston in the bottom.
Well, the National League has Atlanta at 16-6. They've won 8 of their last 10. They're 8-3 at home and 8-3 on the road. And we have a very interesting series coming up when we hit the road as we travel to Atlanta. Hey, I'll say it now. If we can take one of the 3 games in that series, I'll be satisfied. How about you?
Yeah, I'll be satisfied as well. And I thought the same thing with the Yankees, and that's what we ended up doing. We won 1, really should have won 2, but that's okay. But I mean, the Braves are hands down, I think, the best team in baseball. Record-wise, though, we say it's the Guardians. So
Did you see
I
what
agree.
Fried did last night?
No, what'd he do?
Complete game 3-hit shutout.
That's the difference, Bruce.
He had really labored this year too.
We're yet to see one of our starters even go 7 innings. So good for them.
Yeah, so Atlanta forthcoming. Philadelphia's got their act together, and as anticipated, they are the second best team in that division, 15-9 record behind Atlanta, and they have won 8 of their last 10. Then comes the New York Mets at 12-11, Washington and Miami 6-19. Boy, there's a real debate whether the White Sox, Miami, Colorado, or the Oakland A's are the worst team in all of Major League Baseball. I don't know. It's an ongoing debate. We shall see. In the Central Division, which is a very well-balanced division, right now Milwaukee, to the surprise of many, is 14-8 and in first place at 10-4 on the road. The Cubs are 14-9, and they've won 7 of their last 10 games. I got some bad news this last week with Suzuki going down. He was off to a fantastic start for them. Imanga, a Japanese lefty that they brought in during the offseason, has pitched extremely well for them. Pitching will still be the key for that franchise, in my opinion, as well for everybody in that division. Cincinnati's 13-10, Pittsburgh 13-11, only 2 games out, and St. Louis at 10-14 is already 5 games out. I just can't believe that the St. Louis Cardinals are heading to another season like they had last year, where there were so many games behind, and I think they were like 20 games below the 500 mark. It's hard to believe that storied franchise could fall that quickly. And in the West, the Dodgers have shown some vulnerability, and that they're human. 14-11, their record. San Diego, Arizona, San Francisco, and lowly Colorado at 6-18. Out of it looks like already, but San Diego, Arizona, and San Francisco all beating up on one another. Pretty balanced division, unless the Dodgers really get their act together and blow everybody away. All right, time for the Ask Bruce segment. What do you got for me this week, Ryan?
All righty, Bruce. Even though April is overreaction month in the Major League, how much of a threat do you see the Tigers and Royals being to the Guardians for the AL Central crown? And also, has your perception of Detroit and Kansas City flipped since you gave your initial divisional predictions?
I don't know yet. I've got to see us play them. I want to see more of Detroit and Kansas City. Now, I can tell you this. Kansas City's pitching has been off the charts tremendous. Lugo and Singer and this Radden's this company, they are really pitching effectively. And I know a lot of people thought optimistically that Kansas City would really come about into their own this year. And so far, they're showing signs of that. So I think it's going to be very fascinating once we start playing them within our own division. And the same thing with Detroit. Now, obviously, their pitching is the key. They brought in Maheda. I mentioned Maheda earlier from Minnesota. Now he's part of their rotation. And obviously, they have a scrappy offensive team. There's no question they're kind of built the same way we are. They're not laden with tremendous power, but pitching will be the key. I know Mize is now pitching for them. Skubal, of course, is very, very good. He's one of the best in the majors and is going to compile some tremendous numbers for them. But I'm very, very anxious to see. Once we start playing them in home and homes, I'll be able to answer that a lot more effectively.
Alrighty, Bruce, this is kind of a tough one. I pondered it a little bit. If you could only give an extension to one Guardians player, I'm going to give you 2. Which one would you give it to? Steven Kwan or Josh Naylor?
To only one of those two?
If you could only give one of them an extension.
I have to go with Naylor because of the power. I love Kwan. I think Kwan is showing this year that he can vie for the batting title, the league batting title. I love the way he plays the game. He extends the defense by trying to take the extra base when he runs. He plays tremendous defense defensively in left field. He's just a tough guy to strike out. He's the prototypical leadoff man. He reminds me of Ichiro in that he's so tough to strike out and he can foul off pitches, so it takes pitchers deep into the count. But there's no substitute for power. And obviously, we've been so desperate here in Cleveland for power, and Naylor's really come into his own, not only as a legitimate power threat with homers and RBIs, but also as a leader in that clubhouse. So I like him very, very much. And he's really living up to the expectations that the front office had of him when we acquired him. So that's a tough one, I admit, but I'd give the edge to Naylor.
Alrighty, last one here for Bruce. Flip it over to the NFL draft, of course. What was your favorite NFL draft moment, and is there a draft that was more memorable for you than any others?
Yes, it was Cleveland Browns. It was right when I came to Cleveland back in 1978, because that year we selected Ozzie Newsome and Clay Matthews. Pretty good draft.
I'd say so.
Pretty good draft. So that was an easy one for me, that's for sure. As far as the Browns are concerned, of other teams, that would be a different question. Well, that about wraps things up for this version of Bonus Time with Drennan, as we will be back with you next week. I think I'm going to try to get Gene Winters on the show next week, as the Cavaliers will have by then hopefully clinched this series against Orlando, and we can anticipate challenging the mighty Boston Celtics in the next round. On behalf of Ryan Smith, you have a great week, and we will see you next week here on the Big Play Sports Network. Until then, as always, and most importantly, you remember, I love you, Ohio. And